We're going to hear some tones with the NUX MG-300 Mark II today. This is their update and upgrade to the MG-300, which I did a demo video with a couple of years ago. I was mightily impressed with it at the time, and I still think it is one of the best value guitar amp modeling solutions out there. For the sounds and the price point, I feel like they really hit a sweet spot on there. And this essentially uses the same form factor on here. You've got very similar inputs and outputs on here, you know, a mono guitar in, a stereo 1/4-inch jack output on there, an auxiliary in, along with a headphone out on here. You have an expression pedal, which can now control various different parameters in your effects blocks. You have the ability to reorder effects, and there is a new scenes functionality per preset. To showcase the sounds and the functions, what I'm going to do is go through 4 presets that I made for the MG-300 Mark II. They will ship as factory presets. Let's dive in. We're going to use the NUX QuickTone editor so that I can show you how I go about making presets on this device. If you've seen my video with the original MG-300, this will look very familiar. The QuickTone editor will allow you to not only dial in each effects block as you like it, it will let you change the effect order by simply dragging and dropping. And you can use the scenes functionality on here to actually change the effect type per scene. So you can have a single preset with different amps and effects built into it. Furthermore, if you come up here and allocate the expression pedal and foot switch functions, you can have the foot switches to scroll up and down through presets, like on the original MG-300, or now you can use them to scroll up and down through scenes, and you can either just have it as a simple toggle from scene 1 to scene 2, or you can choose to engage the 3rd scene and scroll through those. You can do a similar thing with the expression function over here. Currently it's assigned to be the wah, but you can have it assigned to the effects, the amp, so you can control things like the gain levels on there, or the modulation, delay, or reverb. I'll just leave it as a wah at the moment. I'll run you through a few presets. This preset that I've called LT Crunch is using the Brit 800 amp model. What I like on here is you can see the amp controls as well as the IR or cab selection over here. If you do want to change that, you can simply right click either on the cabinet here, or you can right click up here on your IR selection. And for the amp, if you right click on that block, you can see there's 27 available amp models on here. So I'm using my free IR that you can grab in the video description. And I'm also using a little bit of this plate reverb, very low decay and level. Let's hear the 3 scenes that I've dialed in here with this Brit 800. So it's doing a typical Marshall style thing, which any modeler worth its salt should be able to do. I had a few extra effects in there. You would have heard that the lead scene was louder on there. I'm using this 10-band EQ to bump a little bit of the mid-range and the overall level over here. And there's several different options you can use in this EQ block. You've got a 6-band or a 10-band EQ. Similarly, I had a bit of the panning delay on over here, as well as some detune from the mod block. Now, I really like what NUX are doing with their delays and modulations. They make a couple of different hardware delay and mod pedals that I think are fantastic value for money. And I believe these are a lot of the same algorithms in here. So for the mod choices, you've got detune, which I obviously really like, but you've also got things like a phase 90 and phase 100. You've got models of a TC stereo chorus and flanger. There's a CE1 chorus, which I think sounds fantastic. You know, if I wanted this before the amp, I could just drop it and drag it over here. And of course I can play this chord. also a couple of different reverb choices in here. You've got room, hall, plate, spring, and shimmer, kind of all the essentials that you would expect from a reverb, and the delays are also fairly nicely treated in here. You've got an analog, a digital delay, a modulated delay, some tape echo, a reverse delay, the panning delay that we heard in this preset. And one that I find quite interesting is this phi delay in here. This is nice for the kind of cleaner, more ambient style stuff, especially if you paired it up with something like the hall reverb on here. You know, crank the level, we've got the phi delay happening, and do some swells. The next preset that I've dialed in is based around the Überschall model in here. This is my favorite NUX high gain amp model, but you do have all the classics like the SLO, a rectifier, a JCM 2000, which I think sounds pretty good as well. And I think I demoed in my last MG-300 video on there. So I like the Überschall boosted with something like a tube screamer. You've got a fairly standard selection of drives, distortions, and fuzzes, as well as a touch wire in here. I'm basically using the same IR, the same EQ, modulation, and delay. See in there with the scenes, I'm able to change the effect type in each block per scene, which I think is a welcome addition. It means that if essentially you're using the same amp and cab model for your core tone, you don't have to dial in a bunch of different presets in there. You can just use that same core amp and cab tone and then change up the effects as you like per scene. I'll show you another preset that I have called LT less in here. And this is all about kind of cleaner and edge of breakup sounds. Again, 3 different scenes with a few different effects in here. I have tapped the pickups on this PRS now. We get this starting with their AC30 model. there's a couple of different clean style amps in there. We heard the AC30, a high watt model, and then a bassman style model in here called the Bassmate. I was using the tremolo in the modulation block for this particular scene. And what we should hear is the tape echo as well. So just bring the level and the time up on this one. I can also kick in this JHS style Morning Glory pedal on top of it for a little bit of drive. Last preset that I want to go through on here, I've called LT way more. I'm using a couple of different high gain amps in here, slathered in some different modulation and delay style effects. So this is using their Friedman BE model in here. For the modulation, I've got their model of the TC Electronic stereo chorus and flanger. And I love the attention to detail with this one. This little graphic includes everything that the original pedal has on there. So I'll start with it bypassed, and then we'll kick in the chorus on top of that. I'm just using the pan delay again. In addition to that Friedman model, you could hear the SLO model on there, boosted with a Tube Screamer style drive. And then I had a fuzz going into the high watt model with some tape delay on there, which is always a classic combination. From the editor, you do have the ability to set up all the global settings on the pedal. For example, you can set up the USB playback and record levels on here because this is a USB audio interface as well. You've got a variety of different auxiliary in settings and routing modes for when you are using this as an interface on here. And you can also use it to update the firmware as well. What I like about this is they've taken a winning formula, the MG-300, sat in its price range with some features that I think nothing else at the time really had, but they built on top of that with some features and functionality that you normally find in more expensive modelers, like the scenes and the ability to have different effect types in each block on there. Essentially, you've got the equivalent of channels in the blocks on there. So if you just wanted to use this as a very simple plug and play solution to travel with or practice with on headphones, because there is a drum machine built into it and a headphone out as well, you can do that. Or you can actually use it for more advanced use cases like gigging with it. You know, this does have a TRS output on it, so you'd need a stereo breakout cable like I'm using here if you wanted to play in stereo. But the scenes functionality on there actually does make this feel and sound a lot more pro, for use of a better term. I don't know what that means, because gear from the absolute cheapest to the most expensive could be considered pro or not pro these days. But I do like that NUX have taken the time to take their really popular, affordable modeler and upgrade it with a bunch of new sounds and features. If you want to learn more, check the video description. You can also grab my free IR or check out the music that I make with my band Ragdoll and my Patreon in the video description. Let me know your thoughts on the original MG-300 if you've got one, and the Mark II version in the comments section below. But for now, go and play your guitars, make some loud guitar noises, and I'll see you on the next one.